Hey everyone, welcome back to Color Plants. Me again, Mark. Today we're back at the greenhouse and it's been a rainy night, but now the sun is going up and I managed to do a little setup here so that we can record well. And in this video, we're going to be talking about my Echeveria Gibbiflora hybrids collection, and particularly the ones that I haven't shown to you yet, because I see that I have managed to gather up some of the more expensive varieties and Gibbiflora types that you might be interested in, especially because these plants are much more resilient during the summer season, and overall throughout the year they are some of the most reliable Echeverias that I've had. And also I will be showing to you their care needs, tips on how you can grow them well, and also later on we're going to be talking about propagation. I will give you some strategies and tips on how to propagate these plants. So now let's just go on to the first one, and this is the most common, I think, or least expensive Gibbiflora that I've had, but I wanted to show this to you because this has already progressed so much in the past few weeks that I've been putting it out. Okay, this came from our rain or shine location outside, and you can see it's still wet. Okay, I'm trying to dodge away the water. Okay, so it's still wet right now, and this used to be just a single-headed Echeveria, and I mistook it for a peach pride, but it's not a peach pride. I think it's the lemon and lime. Okay, Echeveria. If you have the lemon and lime, and if it looks the same, then comment it down below. But I believe that this is one of those Gibbiflora hybrids that is going around here in the Philippines, and it's not very expensive. It's kind of related to the millionaire or the Echeveria pallida that we have, though the pallida doesn't have a much more tight rosette appearance. The pallida has this long, like spoon-shaped leaves, but this one has round, short, and compact leaves, and you can see that it's really nice, and it's really large compared to my face. Okay, I can cover myself with this. And also we have a lot of pups at the back, really nice, and it has this long flower stalk right now that I'm just letting it go, and I don't see any mealybugs on it, and I really like it because it's been very tough. It's been growing on my rain or shine location, and it has did really well compared with my other plants, which sometimes I bring out succulents that they don't do well out there, but this one had did so well. And you can see the new growth. It's still producing growth at the middle. You can see the clean looking for leaves. It has a slight touch of farina on it, very minimal farina, but it still has it, and the leaves grow really nice. Okay, so yeah, I'm just gonna let it grow, and then maybe later on we can behead it so that we can produce more pups on the side. So that's one way you can propagate it, by beheading. Okay, so there's that. And then I have another one which I recently brought outside. I placed it in a big clay pot because I didn't want it to get blown into the wind or get easily pushed by children outside. So I placed it in a terracotta pot, and yeah, it's been doing so well. It's been doing well so far. Okay, this is the Echeveria Momoka, or the Peach Pride Varigata. So I've had this in a small, like shallow pot before, but it has done really well. It has rooted very quickly. And yeah, I just know that it won't grow anymore in its old pot because it was already too small. So I had to up-pot it, move it into a bigger pot, because sometimes succulents, or most of the time succulents, won't grow any further if they already have established on their old potting mix or in their old pots, because they will be limited in their growth to the size of pot that you plant them in. So if you plant them in a small pot, they will be bonsai, they will stay small. So I wanted this plant to grow large, so I placed it in a larger container, and I placed it outside. And what I find with this one, it's similar to the lemon and lime that we have here. It's very resilient. You can see the new growth it has made. Okay, it used to have even like stains because some type of insect like pooped on the plant. So yeah, it was really ugly looking, so I just sprayed it with water. I thought it was rot, but it wasn't rot, so it was just poop. And once I washed it off with water, then the poop was gone and it was clean looking again, and I placed it out in the rain or shine location, and after a few rains the leaves have looked very clean. Okay, so far, and you can see the variegation on it has been really stable. You can see that the color of the leaves, all the leaves that it grows has variegation in them. Okay, I'm just placing it outside, so you might want to grow your Gibbiflora hybrids outside in full sun because these succulents really stretch out a lot. You can see the stretching on this plant. Okay, you can see the layering that it already had on its leaves. You should be growing them much more compact, and if you are growing them much more compact, instead of growing upright, they will grow outward. Okay, they will grow like wider rather than taller. So if you grow them like in less sun, they will get tall, they will get stocky, and the leaves won't get wide. They will just stack up on each other instead of growing wide, because leaves at the bottom, they will usually get larger if the leaves on top are covering them. So if you give them less light, the leaves on the top won't cover them because it will grow upright. If you get what I'm saying, okay? So that is one way that these Echeverias grow, especially these Gibbifloras. They can be quite vigorous growers. Once you establish them, once you water them consistently, they can grow very fast, and they're very resilient. They can tolerate a lot of water. So that is the Peach Pride. Okay, that is one of the variegated Gibbiflora hybrids that you can buy, and it's one of the more cheaper ones right now at the market here in the Philippines. Okay, now let's move on to the next. Let me just show you something that I already showed you before, and this is the Caveria Japan Moon River. Okay, you can see mine is not looking so hot. Okay, it's still small. I still have to study how to make it grow large, and I think I have to water it a few times. Okay, these Caveria Gibbifloras also can get really thirsty if you don't establish them right away, and sometimes they will just dry up their old leaves. Okay, but you just have to water them much more consistently so that they can root up. But what I would say with these ones, they have much more thicker roots compared to your smaller Echeverias, which makes it so that they are more tolerant of watering. They're not that sensitive to overwatering, and also they have thicker stems on them. Okay, they're not those types that have like soft stems for a long time. They will grow like thick stems. They will have corking on their stems very quickly. You can probably see it. So on this side, you can see that the stem it has, even though it's still a small plant, is already corking, is already thick. So that is what you would usually find in Gibbiflora hybrids, which is why they are very tolerant of watering. And on this one, on this Japan Moon River, the growth on it has been quite consistent. Okay, it's just that it's shedding leaves still. So I'm thinking that this is not yet established, so I have to water it probably tonight. Okay, and then once it establishes itself, the drying up of the bottom leaves won't be that much noticeable, or it won't happen very often anymore because it already has roots to support it. So it will just continuously grow. So yeah, I think that's about it for this Japan Moon River. We still have to establish it so that we can grow it a little more, because the Japan Moon River, if you have seen in other pictures, it can get really wide and get really large and get really beautiful. And you can see here, it's really striking with its light colored leaves and the yellowish variegation that it has on the sides. And so far the variegation on this one has been stable, but I just know that if I don't give it enough sunlight, the variegation on it could disappear. It will just be pure green leaves from then on. So you don't want to do that with your variegated succulents. You really have to give them the maximum amount of sunlight that you have so that they can keep their variegation. Now, you also just want to, like, along with the sunlight that you're giving them, you want to water them often, because if you don't, they will just dry up like this, and sometimes they will show burn marks like this one. Okay, you can see burn marks on there, burn marks on there. Okay, it is signs that the leaves are like shrinking because they're thirsty. So yeah, I just have to water this more often. Okay, so we have that. Now on to the next. Yeah, I think we're gonna be talking about this one. This one had been with me for a little while. This is our Caveria Madiba, and this is one of the more expensive succulents back then, but the price on this one has really dropped so low here in the Philippines. You can buy this one for 200 pesos for a medium-sized one. Okay, or probably you can buy a multi-headed one for 200 pesos. So it's not that expensive anymore compared to back then. Back like 2 years ago, it was very, very expensive and it was very hard to come by. But now they have mastered to propagate this plant on the highlands, so they already have a lot of Madibas on there, which is why the prices have gone I think I find some of these plants being sold for 150 pesos. So yeah, that's really cheap. That's like $3 in US, in America. Okay, so what I realized when growing this plant is it's a very consistent grower. Even though it's not yet fully established, it will continue to produce new growth as long as it has some amount of roots under it. Yeah, and it can like attach very well, and it's not that sensitive to overwatering. This one I have more problems with it drying up rather than being rotten, being overwatered. So yeah, I really like the Madiba. It's very resilient, very quick to grow. Now some others will just want their Madibas to have this wavy appearance, but yeah, I don't mind it. I know that it will just get more wavy as it grows, but if you don't give it sunlight, you will have this appearance though. If you don't give it enough sunlight, I've been giving it enough sunlight here in my place. This greenhouse already has the maximum sunlight that I can give them, but still it has produced these leaves. You can see it looks like a pineapple, okay, because the leaves are moving upwards. Okay, but yeah, I'm just hoping that once it grows, it can get wider still. But I really like it. The growth on it has been consistent. You can see these are all new leaves at the center of the plant. So that is our Caveria Madiba. Yep, and I just watered it the other day, and it's already attaching itself to its potting mix. Okay, so we have that. Now, on to the next. I think we'll go with this one first. This is one of those mutated forms of Gibbifloras, and this is Echeveria Diamond State Varigata. Okay, you can see here, really nice, wonky and weird appearance on the leaves. You can see it's not uniform in any way. The leaves grow on their own. They produce their own shape. Each of the leaves are very unique, and it's really nice, and I really like the look of it. This is the original head, by the way, and this is another head, and yeah, I think this is another head or probably a flower stalk. I don't know. Yeah, but it's been producing a lot of new heads at the sides. So yeah, I think there's also, you can see here, there's also a pop right there at the bottom. Okay, so yeah, really nice and really fast growth on this one. This is also one of those older, like more expensive succulents that you wouldn't buy because they're too high priced, but now it also has dropped in price since it, I think a lot of people have already propagated it on the highlands, so which is why it's gotten much more cheaper. But even though it's much cheaper, it's still very stunning to look at. You wouldn't see like any other plant looking like this. Okay, probably the Paul Bunyan. We also have a variegated, mutated Paul Bunyan that also has these narrow leaves that are wonky, that are monstrous in form. But yeah, the Diamond State is much more red in color. The Paul Bunyan is much more bluish green in color. And the Paul Bunyan, I've heard around that it can also tend to reverse its monstrosity. It can get like normal leaves, so the leaves can develop like much more normally. They wouldn't get very monstrous anymore. But for this one, the Diamond State Varigata, it has remained pretty consistent with me. I don't see any of the leaves reverting to a normal form. They're just like that, okay? Because a succulent, if a monstrous succulent like produces normal leaves and it won't be monstrous anymore, it will lose its significance, it will lose its identity, and you will already have to find a different name for it because that is no longer the cultivar. Okay, it already reverted back. So which is why you have the topsy-turvy reverting to Ronyoniae, producing flat leaves instead of folded leaves. So that will already be sold as Ronyoniae and not topsy-turvy. And so if you buy a monstrous plant that is very inconsistent, like it will produce new normal leaves, you might, if you're a seller, you might be losing money on selling that plant because it's no longer monstrous. But on this one, it's very consistent, and yeah, it's been really nice to grow. It's been very easy. I haven't had issues with it ever since I planted it. At the start, it has established well. It had dried up a little bit because I haven't been watering it, but it's not as like excessively like dramatic compared with other succulents which just loses a lot of leaves. This one loses a leaf one by one, so you can catch up to it with watering. It won't like become desiccated very quickly, the Diamond State Barigata. So I really like it, and I would highly recommend it to those who want these unique looking succulents. Okay, so on to the next. This is another one that I bought recently, but I also am having struggles with because I haven't been watering it a lot. So this is our pink Chantilly, and I used to think that, okay, maybe not. So the pink Chantilly, I believe, is the same as the dragon fin Caveria, but there is actually two forms being sold right now at the market. So the pink Chantilly has much more thinner leaves, okay, if it's being sold as a pink Chantilly. But if you find one that has much more thicker leaves, it's being sold as dragon fin here in the Philippines. But I believe that that is the same plant, because when I looked it up, it actually has the same appearance, dragon fin and the pink Chantilly. But I really like it. This one has a much more consistent pink color, though mine is already growing wider. Okay, it's, I think, etiolating, which is why the rosette is very open. So I'm trying to give it more sun, and the new growth is much more closed. Okay, and also the leaves on this one are kind of flappy because I have been under watering it. I haven't been watering too much, but now it's dry. I think I will water it later today, and I really like this plant. I just have an issue with this leaf right here. I think I placed a pot on top of it, and I totally missed that it had a leaf under it, so which is why it got bent like this. Okay, physical damage, but nothing major. And you can see the new growth on this one has been really consistent. You don't see a lot of burning, even though my other Echeverias burn because of the intense hot sun. But on this one, it's very consistent, very nice, and it also has a little bit of monstrosity to it, just like the diamond state Varigata. Okay, so we have that. Now we're on to our last two, and I think I will feature this one first. This one is another of my purchases in the Highlands. Okay, and this is Caveria Beyonce. Okay, this one is not doing it yet for me. You can see it's wobbling. Okay, yeah, I'm actually thinking if I established it. Yeah, but it had roots when it came. So yeah, it must be just like wonky because the potting mix has changed. I readjusted it. So I will try to squeeze it in the potting mix so that it won't move. Okay, but I don't like it when my succulents are moving like this. It gets me nervous because sometimes I think that there's rotting under it. So yeah, I don't like them wobbling around. But yeah, I think this one is still establishing, and it's kind of like dry. You can see here, kind of soft the leaves are, and you can see it already has a closed appearance, probably because of the dehydration that I've been putting it in. I haven't been watering this one, but you can see it's a really nice, beautiful Echeveria. This is also one of the more expensive ones. If you look them up like a few years back, their prices would be too high, but now they're gotten much more common, and they're gotten much more cheaper recently. Okay, so you can buy this one, the Beyonce, probably for about 300 to 500 pesos. Okay, I'm just estimating, but sometimes it will stay on the 500 pesos mark. So it's kind of an expensive Echeveria. So even if you go to the Highlands, you won't find this succulent being sold very cheaply. It will still have a higher price up there. Okay, so if you can afford it, you can just buy it online and not have to go into the trouble of going into the Highlands. Okay, but that's what I did. I went to the Highlands to buy this one. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna have to work with that. But yeah, that is one Echeveria that you can try here in the Philippines. And finally, we're down to our last succulent, and this is the misnamed Echeveria Pistachio. Okay, it's been mislabeled. Okay, because there is no Echeveria Gibbiflora that is pistachio on the internet. There is no succulent like that, and the leaves on this one wasn't monstrous like this one is currently. But since I planted this, it has produced caruncles. So yeah, if you know the name of this succulent, please comment it down below. It kind of looks like an Etna, or probably not. Okay, but the leaves have it has wide leaves, and they are very wavy. You can see here, and these are the older leaves that it had. But once you give it more sun, you get caruncles on it, and it also has a slight bluish farina on it. Okay, you can see there. Okay, you don't want to touch it because it has some farina, and it's really nice, really stunning. You can see here with this spot. Okay, this plant is just a standout. Okay, really nice, kind of like an ice cream plant put up on a cone. Okay, so which is really really nice, and I really really adore this plant. And I didn't even think of it that way when I first started planting it, because I thought that, oh, it's just another Echeveria that I have. But since then, it has already grown on me really really well. I really like the caruncles that it has produced, and the fast growth that it has made, because this one has been very consistent with me. When I planted it, I haven't had issues with it rotting. Also, it didn't dry out too much. You can see that the old leaves on it are still here. Okay, it still holds on to its older leaves. So I really really like that about these plants. So if you can get your hands on a Caveria pistachio being sold as a pistachio here in the Philippines, then you can probably have the same experience that I've had with these succulent. Okay, really really nice. Now let's go on to our care tips for this plant. And what I would say with the Gibbifloras, you want to add a lot more organic materials into their potting mix. And yeah, once their bottom leaves are like wilted like that, okay, and the potting mix is thoroughly dry, you might want to water them right away, because Gibbifloras tend to grow tall with long stalks and leaves on the top. Yeah, that's what happens if you don't water them often, because they will usually lose their bottom leaves. And yeah, their bottom leaves, you cannot propagate them. So yeah, you might want to keep them on the plant. You don't want to be removing the leaves, because you wouldn't be able to propagate them, especially the like more pure Echeveria Gibbifloras. Though there are some Gibbiflora hybrids like the Fred Ives and the Harry Watson, those are Gibbiflora hybrids, but because they're crossed with Cryptopetalums, they can propagate by a leaf. But these ones, okay, they won't propagate by a leaf anymore. Okay, you have to keep the leaves on the plant. You don't have to remove them. And yeah, you can keep them on the plant if you water them consistently. Don't dehydrate them too much. Though sometimes they will have a brighter color, they will have a much prettier appearance if they are stressed a little bit, if they have more sun on them. And yeah, if you're only watering them when they are thoroughly dry. Okay, now when it comes to the sunlight, I would recommend that you give them the maximum amount of sunlight, because that's when you get the nice colors and the caruncles and the variegation on some varieties of Gibbifloras. Without that sunlight, a lot of these Gibbiflora varieties will look the same, because they have that same large wavy type leaf that is very leathery compared to other succulents. And sometimes if you don't give them sunlight, they will all look the same, especially if they lose their caruncles. So you will see their differences once you give them more sunlight. So I would recommend high amounts of sunlight on these plants. And you don't be bothered about their like them wanting like cold temperatures. They don't really need that. Okay, they can tolerate heat as long as it's not like burning sunlight, like going into the 45s or 40s. Probably they will get dormant as well if you give them like too much heat. So yeah, you just have to be mindful of that. You can also experiment on which plants work in your place if it's too hot. So you might want to experiment first. Okay, don't expect that every plant you buy will be like smooth sailing. Okay, you just have to learn how to adjust. Okay, see some errors or see some mistakes or problems in your area and try to solve it. Okay, if you have high heat, like some commenters have been commenting on our videos, like they're getting 40 degrees Celsius, that is already too high. You can probably try growing them under grow lights indoors, or you can add like shade nets on top of your greenhouse. I have a shade net here. I haven't changed it because it's getting rainy. And shockingly, after all these weeks of dryness here in my place, we're getting rain. So I don't want to add a shade net anymore, because it will already be too dark because of the recent rains that we're getting. So if you have consistent like long amounts of days where there is no rain, there is just pure blazing hot sun, you might want to add a shade net over your succulents so that they can survive. And you can probably see a trend here. A lot of successful succulent growers will have some type of greenhouses in their place. Succulents are not just grown as like ordinary houseplants. If you want to collect them, and if you want to have a longer amount of success, or if you want to have longer successes with them, you might want to invest in some type of greenhouse, okay, along the way. Okay, you can't have success with succulents if you just grow them like on a windowsill. You have to have some type of space for them. They're demanding like that. They're very very demanding like that. Okay, they need a lot of sunlight, and then they don't want to be rained on too much, and then they also don't want it to be too hot. Okay, or they will go dormant. But yeah, in the highlands they get hot, but I don't think they get like 40 degrees hot. So yeah, I think 40 degrees is too much. But if you're in the Philippines and it doesn't reach like into the 40s, yeah, you can probably have success with succulents without pouring too much. Okay, so yeah, onto the pests and onto fertilizing. I have, okay, I'm using this type of insecticide. This is Starkle G. Okay, they can still get mealybugs, Gibbiflora hybrids, though they are much more resilient compared to others, but they will still get mealybugs from time to time, but they won't get infestations very quickly. You can usually catch up to them, and if their leaves are loose like this, you can pick at the mealybugs and remove them using a tweezer or a stick. And also, if you don't want to bother with that, you can use the Starkle G on their potting mix, put it on their potting mix, and it will get absorbed into the plant once you water the roots. Okay, so that is one way you can deal with that. With fertilization, you can fertilize it with a slow release fertilizer like an Osmoco that I'm using here. Okay, but with my Gibbiflora hybrids, that's something that I don't often do because they tend to grow on their own and they grow large, especially if you have some organic materials on their potting mix. They can just use up the nutrients on that to grow large. Okay, you won't have to worry about fertilizing them too much. Now when it comes to flowering, okay, there is some flowers on this one. I think I cut off the tip on this flower stalk. Okay, you can probably see it right there. Okay, this is the tip, the original, and I cut it off, and now it has produced flowers on this side. So yeah, that's one thing that can also attract mealybugs, the flowers, and sometimes the mealybugs will only appear if it's the flowering season. So yeah, that's one thing you might want to be aware of. But what I find with these flower stalks, what's very good about them is you can propagate them by flower stalks. So that is the final thing that we're going to be talking about, how to propagate them by flower stalk. I have another succulent here, the Echeveria decora, which is struggling, by the way. I didn't show it in this video. That is a Gibbiflora hybrid. It's struggling because I think I planted it in a bad potting mix. Okay, so now I took off one of its flower stalks and then I planted it in soil. And I took off the flowering parts, okay, to demonstrate it. Okay, this is the flowering part of the flower of the Caveria flowers. Okay, these, like you can see here, it's already producing like petals and it already has that shape. Okay, that's about to open up. So yeah, that is the thing that you want to remove if you're going to be propagating it by flower stalk. So this long stalk that you have here, you can cut it up here because that's where the flowering starts, and then you can cut it up here, so at the bottom or as far into the plant as you can. Okay, remove the bottom leaves so that you can make space for nodes, and then flap it into a potting mix, and then just wait for it to root. And along those stalks you can probably find some new heads coming up. Once you root it up, once you water it consistently, you can see new growth come out of that flower stalk. And flower stalks are very fast growers. Okay, I think they have some type of hormone in them that makes them grow faster compared to the main plant, so which is why you can get away with propagating a few heads out of the flower stalk. But once the head grows too big, then you can probably separate the head itself and plant it as its own succulent. Okay, so that is what you can do with flower stalks. This is a strategy that I found first with Sir Chuck Cirillo, Ceriscapade's channel. He has experimented on flower stalks on his channel, and I find that he had success with it, so I tried it on my Gibbifloras. This is especially nice to do with Gibbifloras because they have large flower stalks, but with other Echeveria types which has thin flower stalks, you might not have that success with them. So you might have more success with those type of propagation method with Echeveria Gibbifloras that has this large, very large flower stalks. If you have any other succulent that has large flower stalks, any other Echeveria I mean, then you can also propagate it by flower stalks. Yeah, but that is especially nice with Gibbifloras because Gibbifloras, as I said before, also doesn't propagate by leaf. So you won't propagate this one if you remove a leaf out of it. Okay, so you might have success with the flower stalk propagation method. Okay, and what I find with the flower stalk propagation, it's also very consistent. You can see this is the, as I said before, this is the Echeveria decora that I have propagated. On this part, okay, you can see that is the old flower stalk. It has already dried up its tip. Okay, and this is the head that had come out of it, and I just planted it into this pot because it already has, so yeah, it already had enough roots in its pot. So yeah, I managed to separate it because I planted it along with my other propagations. So I was able to separate it, and now it's already producing this new head. Okay, that I intend to water a little more so that it can grow bigger. Okay, or probably we will sell it. Okay, because some people really like to buy succulents from me, even though I'm not that big of a propagator yet or grower yet. Okay, so probably we will sell this later on. Okay, so that is one way you can propagate your succulents by their flower stalks. So you can see there. Okay, so I think that's about it. I think we covered all that you might need when it comes to growing Gibbiflora hybrids. There are a lot of different other varieties of Gibbifloras. You can look it up on Instagram. You can search for the term Gibbiflora hybrid, or probably on Google or any other Crassulaceae websites that you can find. There are a lot of Gibbiflora hybrids, and they're still being produced consistently. People are always hybridizing with Gibbifloras because they are much more reliable, much more tolerant of water and of sunlight than your other Echeverias. So yeah, I think that's about it for this video, guys. If you really like the tips that I gave, please make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye.